lately, and probably more than likely not going to use your ideas for videos. I know you've not been a fan of that, but just talking. I'm just going to be here. I'm just going to listen. There's nobody watching. So what's been on your mind lately? You hate me? Okay, nice to know. Definitely writing it down. So is there any ideas that you've been thinking of, maybe that I could possibly do a video on? Of course, not going to use it. We got the "you hate me" part. I wrote it down. But no, the camera's not on. It's just sitting there. Like I said, you got fish food up there. Does that give you any ideas? I know I talk about fish food all the time. People out in YouTube land probably get bored of that. But like feeding regimens, like what people feed and how often. It's a good idea. Of course. Not gonna use it. I think that's about all I need. I mean, did you need anything else? Like, anything just to get off your chest? You okay with that? Alright, I guess that concludes our session. We'll talk about payment another time. But like I said, not going to use your idea for a video. I just keep these notes for myself so that I can review them for future subjects, we'll say that. And that concludes our session. Thanks for stopping by. Do you want a fist bump? Yeah, appreciate it. What's going on, YouTube? Forrest here, Cichlidman09. Happy Monday, which means it's another episode of Cichlidman09 Asks. If you didn't know that already, you're new to my channel, so I'm going to let you know what it is. It's a weekly series I like to do where I pose a question to the YouTube community. All you viewers out there behind your computer screens and whatnot, telephones, whatever, your cellular devices, be that as they may. And basically kind of get the barometer on the YouTube community, see what you guys have some opinions on some things. Maybe some things are actual applications where, it's something you're doing or want to do. Either way, it's a question I pose to you that I want you guys to answer in the comments below. Would very much appreciate that. I love the influx of information this series has developed. And let's get to it. Now, I promised this guy right here that I wasn't going to use his video idea, but we're going to use it anyways because it's a great idea. It kind of goes with some stuff that I've been talking about with my whole Southern Delight series on the Fast Fact videos, as well as our next Fast Fact, which is our informational video of the week, not necessarily fast, is going to be a DIY, full DIY on gel foods. Going to try and do my best to put something together. We're going to continue that fish food talk that seems to be ongoing and continuing and always happening within the community and the hobby. It's just one of those hot button topics that everybody just loves talking about, myself included, myself especially. I know a few of you guys out there know that I'm a fish food blabbity-blue. I love this stuff. I love talking it. But my question for you guys today was this guy's idea, and I've asked what your favorite fish food was before on a previous Cichlidman09, and I'm asked. I'm sure I'll ask it again in another episode. But today is not necessarily about branding. I don't care if you feed Southern Delight. I don't care if you feed Hikari, whatever. You can put what you're feeding in the description below. My thing is I want to know your feeding regimen in terms of how often you feed, maybe what you're feeding, what. Basically take that whole action of feeding your fish into a nutshell, be that feeding pellets, freeze-dried, frozen, flake food, whatever, live, depending on what you're doing. People, saltwater aquariums, African cichlid tanks, planted tanks, whatever. I'll take feeding your plants fertilizers as a 100% awesome answer. So if that's your answer, absolutely post it below. If this video gets 1,000,000 trillion views, there better be 1,000,000 trillion responses down in the description below or in the comments, because that's what it's really all about. Is I want your guys' opinions on these topics and these subjects. Even though I say my opinion, it may seem like it's all about me. It's really all about you guys out there. All of my almost 1,500 subscribers. Absolutely fantastic. having a blast with it. About time I answered the question, right? Again, apologize. It was a good topic, okay? Good topic. So we just used it anyways. He doesn't like sometimes I steal his video ideas. My bad. So, my feeding regimen is pretty darn simple. It's not very consistent because, you know, my fish don't. Basically, I would say probably between 2 times a day to 5 times a day my fish eat. My adult fish probably only a couple times a day. This guy right here, who's not growing a whole lot, probably gets fed twice a day. He gets fed the growth by Southern Delight, which is actually back over there. I'm not going to get it. Adult fish need to be fed a little bit less, of course. So, you know, for fish like Hulk, who is an adult, doesn't necessarily need a bunch of feedings throughout the day. As an overall, like, philosophy, I'm a firm believer of feeding small amounts more often. That's how it works in people, and I'm not comparing fish to people, but people who eat smaller amounts more frequently are usually going to be healthier. Your system's going to be going along, and I kind of transfer that philosophy over to my fish. So I prefer to feed my fish more times a day. For my young fish, they get fed upwards 4 or 5 times a day, but in small amounts. I'm not letting them pig out for those, you know, feedings, because if you pig out, and, you know, 5 times a day, you're just going to have obese fish, and that's not what I'm looking for. But for your younger fish who you want that metabolism going, I really do like feeding small amounts frequently for fish. Even my real mags underneath the camera right there, they're still growing technically, even though they're, you know, relatively large. They still get fed 3-4 times a day just to keep that metabolism moving. Say if you take a fish like Hulk, his metabolism right now as an adult is slowed down a little bit. He's not, you know, his insides aren't working as quickly, so he doesn't necessarily need 3 times a day feedings, because the calories he's burning, and I'm again comparing this to humans, isn't that with a fish that's growing, using a lot of calories, you know, all that kind of stuff that needs that frequent replenishment of nutrients, which is how I see it. These are all my opinions, by the way. This is not 100% stated fact, Cichlidman09 stamp of approval. This is just the stuff that, why I do it. Doesn't matter if it's right, because it's what I do and it works for me. And that's what this series is all about, is figuring out what works for you and sharing that with the YouTube community, and that's why this series is so awesome. For fry, young fry, boom, all the time feeding. That's why I like feeding gel foods. Click, click, next video coming up, stay tuned for that, because they can eat all day long at their leisure. Eat all day long, chunk, 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 and just keep that system moving. The faster and quicker you can keep the system moving, as long as you're keeping it up with nutrients, the better it's going to be. So, you know, for me, rule of thumb, the younger the fish, the more frequently they eat. The older the fish, the less they eat. And that's a pretty general rule. But for Hulk, like I said, maybe 1 to 2 feedings a day, maybe 3 if I'm getting fancy. But you know, it's really kind of a fluid situation. When my fish come up to the glass and they appear hungry, absolutely I'll throw a couple pellets in there. And I'm not going to let them engorge themselves with food when they do that, because your fish are always up in your face looking for food. But that way, you know, if you're throwing a couple pieces of food in there, it does a couple things. It's getting your fish some nutrients, and it's also helping your fish get trained. With my male spectabilis, who is down there, you know, him coming up to the glass and eating frequently, you know, I probably feed him 4 or 5 times a day, but, you know, in small amounts so that he's not filling up. And, you know, I'm not a big fan of feast than fast. By doing that, he's not only getting nutrients, he's also getting trained that, you know, I'm food, he's coming up to me, you know, he's not scared of me. And that's where food and training your fish comes to an awesome fruition. It's awesome, fantastic, and he's doing great in terms of his personality. But, you know, my feeding regimen is not very consistent. I do like to consistently measure out my food. Where's my measuring spoon? I got one right here. That's a ½ teaspoon. I use that when I'm doing my water changes and whatnot with my Sea Safe, so it works great with the fish food. That way I know how much they're getting. Like with my group of fry over there, I know that they're getting a ¼ teaspoon or a ½ teaspoon or whatever, however many times a day, and that's a consistent number. That way I can, you know, add feedings in, subtract feedings out, and still know that during those feedings they're getting the same amount of food. But like I've always said, this video is not about what I think, not about what I do, even though you may take a little bit from that. you know, the stuff that I do isn't necessarily going to apply at all to any of your situations, because not everybody out there does things the same way and in the same fashion with the same fish, the same water, the same tanks. So, you know, so many factors go into deciding what you're going to feed your fish. I perform a lot of water changes, so I'm not worried about that. But, you know, overfeeding, underfeeding, do whatever makes you happy. Do whatever makes your fish look great. In the end, it's still a hobby. And the great thing about hobbies is you choose what you get to do. And that's why it's so awesome. That's why it's so fantastic. That's why you guys are so awesome, because you all do things so differently. And that's what it's really all about. So, feeding regimen. What is your feeding regimen? What are you feeding? How often are you feeding it? Blah-bitty blue. You know, if you're feeding a treat every 3 or 4 days, like every once in a while for my smaller fish, I'll throw in some mysis shrimp, some frozen mysis, PE mysis, good stuff, high quality frozen shrimp. But I'll throw that in there as a treat. It doesn't really do anything for your fish, but you know, for me, it's just a treat for my. But you know, throw in whatever information you want to. Make it as general as you want. Make it as specific as you want. The main thing is that there's content down in those comments. I want to thank everybody for watching. If you have not subscribed to my channel, this is a series we do every week. We got 3 series every week that I do. Cichlidman09 Asks, Fast Fact, which is more of an informational video, kind of help the community. And then my fish room update, where you guys get to, you know, hang out in the fish room while I talk about nonsense for 15 minutes or whatever, and you guys seem to like all 3 series so far. Thanks for stopping by. Like I said, subscribe if you haven't already. Bunch of links in the description below. Go check them out. There's instructions down there. Subscribe to the YouTube channels. Like the Aquatic Support Systems Facebook page. And that's about all I got to say for you guys. We just want to formally apologize. I'm sorry I took your idea. It's alright. Probably won't do it again. Probably going to do it again. But, see you next time, YouTube. See you Wednesday. Gel-Fish Foods, DIY. Stay tuned. See you then.